Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach.
Hey, welcome. I'm Rachel.
You excited?
I am. I'm always excited when we're getting down to recording and
it's going to be a good
talking
one.
about the cases that we're covering. So
going to Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland today.
Back in the 70s. Peak Troubles territory on this one. But before we begin, a small request from us.
If you enjoy listening to our true crime stories, please give us a like, a follow. 5-star rating would be great. Also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
You can also join us in the public Crypt Chat, a free Discord channel where you can talk about the cases, share theories, and read the latest news from the archive.
Yeah, your support really helps the archive grow, and it ensures no story is ever forgotten. This episode discusses real events involving violence and loss of life during the Northern Ireland Troubles. Some material may be distressing to listeners, so listener discretion is strongly advised. Yeah,
this one's pretty graphic, pretty brutal. So there's quite a lot to get through as well. It's going to be a tough one.
We'll stick it out together and get through it.
We'll stick it out and get through it here. So, let's get to the story.
Well, Belfast, late at night, a woman opens her back door to let the cat in. The street is quiet, one of those thin, terraced lanes where the houses seem to lean in on you. She hears something. At first, she thinks it's the wind catching a loose gutter, or someone dropping a bin lid. But then, she hears it again. Not a crash, not a shout. A voice. Faint, strained, asking for help. She steps out into the entryway. The cold air feels wrong. Her eyes take a moment to adjust before she sees it. A figure on the ground, barely moving. And somewhere nearby, an engine turns over, a door slams, and the dark closes back in around her. This is a story about what happens when fear becomes routine and when one survivor finally breaks the silence.
On Belfast's northwest side, the Shankill Road cuts through rows of terraces and mills, a Protestant district pressed against its Catholic neighbour, the Falls. In the early 1950s, the Troubles have not yet ignited, but the lines are already drawn. Children know which streets are safe and which are not.
Well, in March of 1952, Joyce and William Murphy welcomed their youngest son, Hugh Leonard Thompson Murphy. The family eventually settled in the Shankill area, close enough to the falls that tension was part of their daily life. At Argyle Primary School, teachers later recalled a sharp-tempered boy who seemed to enjoy intimidating other pupils. By the age of 12, he had his first conviction for theft. The offence itself was minor, but it marked his earliest recorded contact with the criminal justice system.
As the 1960s rolled on, Belfast polarized even further. Civil rights marches and riots pushed communities further apart, and Lenny shaped himself according. He dropped Hugh, which he feels sounds too Catholic, and goes by Lenny. He leans into the loyalist identity and gravitates towards violence. At Belfast Boys Model School, he stays only until 16. Leaving at the first opportunity, already more invested in reputation than classrooms. When he leaves, he slips into the orbit of the Ulster Volunteer Force, a loyalist paramilitary organization revived in the mid-1960s, dedicated to maintaining union with Britain through force.
Riots in August of 1969 accelerate everything. Barricades rise, troops arrive, and young men who might once have drifted into petty crime now find themselves patrolling streets and enforcing boundaries. Murphy is among them. He is said to attend paramilitary trials from public galleries, watching closely as cases unravel over disputed evidence and procedure. An early indication of how he comes to view the limits of the system.
What a crazy time to be like a young man. You know, it's like you better pick a side. You got your friends, you know, they're joining one side or the other or whatever, you know, and you're being kind of not forced, but you're just kind of being pressured into, hey, you need to join up and be in this paramilitary sort of situation and fight for one side or whatever. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think, obviously, they felt like they really had a choice, to be fair. It was just, either or, which is a shame. When you haven't got a choice, you can't make a decision to not be involved at all, So either way, the pressure on them to be involved was quite immense, I think, back then.
Yeah, because then people could say, oh, well, you're a coward, or you're being shamed in some way for not picking a side and joining in the fight and all that. And it's like, wait, like maybe some people don't want to go out and get killed, in the street. That's crazy.
Well, obviously, there probably would be influence from their parents as well, because obviously their parents were probably, part of what was happening, and more so than the young ones. But obviously they're then, we need more people. We're going to have to get our sons involved, and,
Yeah.
So.
And it's been brewing for a long time by this point. So, but in late September 1972, Murphy was arrested and charged with the murder of William Edward Ted Pavis, a Protestant shot dead in his East Belfast home after loyalists accused him of supplying weapons to the Provisional IRA. 2 witnesses identified Murphy as the gunman. While awaiting trial, Murphy was held in custody alongside his co-accused, Mervyn Connor. In April of 1973, Connor was found dead in his cell after ingesting cyanide. He left a note confessing to the killing and exonerating Murphy. It has since been alleged that Connor was forced to write the note and take the poison, though this was never really proven. When the case reached the court in June 1973, the identification evidence was challenged after it emerged that a disturbance during the police lineup may have contaminated the process. Murphy was acquitted. He was later rearrested and imprisoned on unrelated charges, including attempted escapes. Well, that's wild. Like that seemed to me like some sort of like crime thriller. The witness had ingested cyanide, like that's crazy, man.
You could probably make a movie out of this.
Well, yeah, man.
Well, through the early 1970s, Murphy moves between custody and the street. In May 1973, while held in Crumlin Road prison, he marries Margaret Gillespie. They later have a daughter. After his release, he settles his wife and child on Brookmount Street in the Upper Shankill, close to where his parents had recently moved. Much of his time is spent in pubs that function as informal loyalist meeting places, the Brown Bear and the Lawnbrook Social Club. He drinks heavily, displays money, and cultivates a reputation built as much on intimidation as it does on loyalty.
By the mid-1970s, Murphy is no longer just a violent foot soldier drifting through loyalist circles. Younger men begin to gather around him in the Shankill Road area, drawn by his reputation and confidence. He does not hold a formal rank, but his presence carries weight. Conversations pause when he enters a room. Men listen when he speaks.
Well, the group does not operate as a formal UVF unit subject to tight command and control. Instead, it functions as a tolerated offshoot, loosely organised, violent, and largely unchecked. Authority is exercised informally through reputation and proximity, rather than any official structure. Its activity takes on an increasingly sectarian character. Attacks are organised locally, weapons are routinely carried, and violence is treated as ordinary rather than exceptional.
By this point, Murphy is embedded, visible, and operating with little meaningful restraint. Those around him understand where his influence lies, even if it's never openly stated. In a city already saturated with violence, Murphy stands on the edge of escalation.
The killings that would make the Shankill butchers infamous did not begin in an alleyway, but in a brutal sectarian shooting at a workplace. On the morning of the 2nd of October, 1975, a group entered Casey's bottling plant in the Millfield area of Belfast during working hours. Believing its employers to be Catholic, they opened fire, killing 4 staff members. Marie McGrattan, 47, Francis Donnelly, 35, Gerard Grogan, 18, and Thomas Osborne, also 18. Osborne dying of his wounds 3 weeks later, on the 23rd of October. Accounts link Lenny Murphy with the group responsible for the shooting.
That'd be so horrific. Like you're just at work.
Mm.
You just hey guys, having some banter with your coworkers and that, and doing your work, and then just guys roll in, pop, pop, pop. And
Yeah,
that's
you
it.
wouldn't expect anything like that, within your workplace. If anything like that's going to happen, you're going to think, well, is this going to happen like when I'm in a pub or, I'm out socializing or just walking the street,
Yeah.
It's just not someone turning up to your work and then slaughtering basically, 4 people.
Yeah. That's crazy stuff.
Madness.
Well, while sectarian shootings in workplaces and public places were tragically common during the Troubles, this massacre stood out for its choice of target and sheer brutality. It was logged by detectives as part of the ongoing wave of sectarian violence, investigated with crime scene photography and witness statements, and added to the long list of murders that frustrated investigators struggling with limited evidence and community silence.
Well, just weeks later, in the early hours of the 25th of November 1975, another murder demonstrated a shift towards the Shankill butcher's signature style. Francis Crossin, 34 years old, a Catholic man and father of 2, was walking near Library Street in Belfast when a taxi driven by members of the Shankill-based UVF grouping pulled up alongside him. One of the group, Lenny Murphy, struck Crossin with a wheel brace to stun him before he and others dragged him into the taxi.
The vehicle was driven back toward loyalist territory. There, Crossin was beaten and had a beer glass shoved into his head. At an entry between Wimbledon Street and Bisley Street, Murphy, brandishing a butcher's knife, slit Crossin's throat nearly through to the spine. His body was discovered later that morning by a local woman on her daily walk.
Oh, God, what a discovery.
Yeah. I need to go pop out and get some milk this morning. Oh, forgot to get some last night. And that you just run across something like that. That would be so scary.
Maybe during it, because there was a lot of stuff like that happening. Did it become normal, normalized to
just to see
like
brutality.
And just see a brutality on the streets.
Yeah.
So I suppose half not expecting, but then expecting that you may see something like that because it was going on. Well, unlike distance shootings, Crossin's killing involved abduction, prolonged violence, and execution by throat cutting, elements that would soon define the gang's terror. Detectives classified it as sectarian murder, but it resisted easy categorization because the victim had been taken from the street and killed elsewhere, leaving little forensic material and no clear crime scene to anchor the investigation.
Just days after the Crossin murder, violence within the UVF itself flared up. On the 30th of November 1975, Noel Nogi Shaw, hopefully I got that nickname right, Nogi, he was a young loyalist from a rival UVF unit, and he was killed during an internal dispute. Earlier, Shaw had shot Archibald Archie Waller, a Murphy associate, during a punishment attack. In response, Murphy arranged for Shaw to be brought to the Lawnbrook Social Club. There, before a gathering of armed loyalists, Murphy pistol-whipped Shaw and then shot him dead. Shaw's body was placed in a laundry basket and disposed of nearby. This is all like gang shit to me. Got a rival gang, but you're all on the same side.
Yeah.
It's a weird sort of, it's like, yeah, you have rival gangs, but you have rival UVF units that are like, well, I fucking hate that guy. Like, aren't you supposed to be on the same side?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Theory, mate.
Insane.
For Detective Chief Inspector Jimmy Nesbitt and his murder squad at Tennant Street RUC station, The killings were distinct in circumstance. A workplace shooting, an abduction followed by throat cutting, an internal loyalist execution, yet all unfolded within the same narrow geography. The same streets, the same pubs, the same names appeared again and again across separate files. Each incident generated its own inquiry, but in loyalist districts, cooperation was limited. Witnesses declined to come forward, statements were withdrawn, and many residents claimed to have seen nothing and heard nothing.
Oh yeah, keep your mouth shut, that type of shit. That's crazy too. It's just fear. Like, you better not say anything or we're going to come kill you, kill your family, and all that. It's just insanity.
Well, you would then, you would shut up, wouldn't you? You wouldn't put your friends and family at risk.
Yep, 100%. And also from like this point on, because we've introduced DCI Nesbitt. So instead of saying, Detective Chief Inspector Jimmy Nesbitt and his murder squad, I just put it, hey, Detective or DCI Nesbitt, but it's an umbrella for all the detectives or the murder squad themselves. I was like, that's a lot of, it's a lot to say every time, the whole detective squad, whatever. So yeah. By the end of November 1975, detectives were registering a shift they just couldn't explain. Sectarian killing had not abated, but the violence was becoming more direct. Attacks were carried out at close range. Locations were repeating. Confidence or recklessness was increasing.
Well, by early 1976, the killings no longer arrived as isolated events. They followed one another closely, often within the same small radius. On paper, each remained a separate murder. In practice, Nesbitt and his team were beginning to recognise the outline of a single campaign.
The year opens with violence that does not yet follow a single fixed pattern. On the 10th of January, 1976, Edward McQuaid, 25 years old, is shot dead on the Cliftonville Road in what amounts to a drive-by attack. There is no abduction, no blade, but the logic is already familiar. A Catholic man in contested space, selected quickly and left where he falls. It is crude, fast, and unambiguous.
Well, weeks later, the killings sharpen into something more deliberate. Thomas Quinn, 55 years old, is abducted overnight between the 6th and 7th of February. His body is later found on a grass bank off Forth River Way, deep inside the Glencairn area of the Upper Shankill. The location matters. This is not an interface street or a confused border zone. It is loyalist ground chosen deliberately. A post-mortem confirms a deep incised wound to the throat. No weapon is recovered.
And just by just by the ages and all that, it's just random. Doesn't matter how old you are. They just, you're a Catholic.
So they're not targeting anybody by, age and saying, oh, we're only going to go for the older ones. Don't kill any young people or whatever.
Yep. They just say, hey, you're Catholic, you're done.
Yeah. They've got one target and that's that.
Mm-hmm. Well, 2 days later, the picture muddies further. Archibald Hanna and Raymond Carlisle are shot dead as they sit in a lorry on Cambrai Street. Cambrai?
Cambrai.
It's, Cambria Street. Cambrai Street. Hopefully, let me know if I got that right. So at first, the attack looks like another sectarian ambush. Only afterwards does it emerge that both men were Protestant. For detectives, the mistake is revealing. Whoever is responsible is not checking carefully. Targeting is fast, assumption-driven, and imprecise. Whatever discipline once existed appears to be slipping, if it even existed at all.
Well, on the 22nd of February, Francis Rice, 37 years old, is abducted and killed in what is now becoming a recognisable way. Seized late at night, beaten, taken to Shankill territory, and killed with a blade in an entry between Mayo Street and Esmond Street. By the time his body is found, officers at the scene are already making quiet comparisons. The wounds resemble Quinn's. The disposal site feels chosen rather than incidental.
Inside Tennant Street, DCI Nesbitt begins laying files side by side. He has very little to work with. No witnesses willing to give names. No fingerprints that can be tied to suspects. Bodies are often dumped hours after death, in places already contaminated by rain, foot traffic, and curiosity. In mid-1970s Belfast, where bombings and shootings stretch resources thin, even murder investigations are forced to compete for time and manpower.
Still, certain features keep coming up. The violence is close. The method repeats. Victims are overwhelmingly Catholic men taken alone at night. The locations cluster around the Shankill and adjoining districts. Among detectives in C Division, an unofficial shorthand begins to circulate: the Butchers. It is not a name that appears in reports or paperwork, just a way of referring to a particular kind of killing without having to describe it out aloud.
After Rice's murder, one detail offers a narrow opening. A woman whose house overlooks the Esmond Street entry tells police that she heard male voices during the night and the sound of a black taxi engine idling nearby. In a city thick with hackney cabs, it's a slender lead, but it is the first time a murder scene has been linked to a specific means of transport. Black cabs are everywhere in the Shankill. More than 200 operate along the road in the course of a day. Nesbitt orders the Shankill taxis to be brought in for examination.
Among them is a cab owned by William Moore, a Shankill meat worker who drives part-time. It yields nothing. The interior has been scrubbed clean, beyond anything consistent with ordinary use. And later, according to accounts of the investigation, Moore disposes of the vehicle altogether.
That sounds suspicious.
Yeah.
Oh, the cops checked out my ride. Let's go have it crushed.
Don't get rid of it like straight away.
Like, SpaghettiOs, they're coming for us.
Deary me.
Well, it draws attention, but suspicion is not proof, and it becomes the investigation's recurring problem. The widening gap between the detectives believe they are seeing and what they can actually demonstrate.
Well, as summer arrives, the violence does not slow. Its form changes, though. In August, Cornelius Con, his nickname, Neeson, 49 years old, is attacked with a hatchet on Cliftonville Road. The injuries are devastating. He dies a few hours later. The weapon is different. The ground is not. Cliftonville is settling into the same mental map, a place where men can be targeted quickly and left behind.
Well, the detectives had reason to suspect a particularly violent UVF-linked circle operating out of the Shankill pubs. What they lacked was anything they could safely put before a court. Intelligence could guide surveillance and shape suspicion, but much of it could not be exposed without compromising sources. Without a witness prepared to speak, a confession, or forensic evidence able to withstand challenge, Nesbitt's options remained narrow. Pressure was applied quietly, files were built, and the team waited for something that could be proved.
By the autumn of 1976, the pattern feels less like coincidence and more like repetition. On the 30th of October, Stephen McCann, 20 years old, is abducted and later found near the community centre of Forth River Road, stabbed and shot. Forth River fits a pattern already familiar to detectives: quiet ground used to abandon the dead. Now it appears again, linking incidents that had previously seemed unconnected.
Yeah, that's going to be their dumping ground by the looks of it. They do what they got to do and then dump them off at the Forth River Road.
Yeah. Would it be more than likely be some sort of like out the way place where they're just going to go and dump all the bodies that they've killed?
Yeah, it's quiet and whatever.
Like their
and
cemetery.
Like they just can get in and out without anybody noticing, or they know it's a safe place to go dump bodies.
Yeah.
And
that might not be, found quite quickly. Maybe biding them some time if that's where they're kind of like placing them.
Possibly. As winter closes in, loyalist violence against their own happens again. On the 20th of December 1976, Thomas Easton, a 22-year-old Protestant man, is beaten to death in the Forth River Road area amid a UVF-UDA feud. So if you don't know what the UDA is, we do have one from the
previous case we covered,
Ogilvy.
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think, episode 8, 9, something like that. But it's the Ulster Defense Association. But anyways, so James Moorhead, 30 years old, another Protestant, is beaten to death in the toilets of a Windsor bar pub on the Shankill. Different victims, different contexts, but the same environment of intimidation and silence that makes the investigation so difficult.
A lot of murders.
Oh, it ain't done yet.
No.
They ain't finished yet.
God.
And this is where, like, it's the gang mentality. It's it's the fear of the public because they don't want to come forward with anything because they don't want to get hurt or have their family get hurt. You're just kind of stuck.
And the murder, there's so many murders. It's so rife that with the amount of murders that are happening, of course, that is going to, you're not going to just sit there and think, oh, no, it's not going to happen to me. They won't really come out and, their threats are just threats. They're not going to follow through. But when you're hearing bodies are piling up, you're just going to sort of be like, yeah, I'm not saying a word.
Yeah.
So.
Or if you're one of them people that walk, they walked into the Windsor bar pub toilet and found this guy's, dead body on, and be like, I think we're going to go find another pub to drink in.
Or just stay home.
or just get some cans from the shop and
just stay home.
And just be like, no. Hey, honey, I'm not going to go out anymore. And that's so sad that people would have to think that way.
And change the way that they live their lives. Yeah.
Can't go out, can't go have fun because they could just, some people could pull up and pop, and you're dead.
Yeah. And very randomly.
Yeah, and just random.
Well, for Catholic families in North and West Belfast, daily life narrows in practical ways. Men avoid certain routes after dark, and a taxi that feels unfamiliar is refused. Rumours circulate a black cab, a question about religion, a blade specific enough to change behaviour, but too fragile to become testimony.
Yep. Changing their habits.
Yep, like we just said, just changed their daily living habit.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, by early of 1977, the abductions and killings of Catholic men continued. On the 3rd of February, Joseph Morrissey, age 52, is abducted in the city center and found stabbed to death near the community center off Forth River Road. There we go again. And it's close to where McCann had been found months earlier. Then, on the 30th of March, Francis Cassidy, aged 43, is abducted and later found off High Fern Gardens, stabbed and shot. The methods overlap: beating, stabbing, gunfire, less a fixed ritual than a toolbox applied within a familiar map.
Well, on paper, each death remains in its own file. In the murder squad office, they begin to read like a tightening line of dates and places. Nesbitt can track the hubs, the pubs where men gather, the streets where witnesses evaporate, the routes that seem to pull victims from busier roads into areas where control is tighter. What he still lacks is the one thing the courts demand: someone who can stand up under oath and point to a face.
You gotta catch him in the act, gotta have a witness, gotta have some sort of evidence, physical evidence, something.
Smoking gun of some sort.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just nothing. Well, inside Tennant Street, the investigation effectively splits in two. On one side, intelligence, names and patterns, sightings and whispers, the kind of information that accumulates but rarely survives cross-examination. On the other side, evidence, the kind that can be disclosed, tested, and defended. The gap between the two becomes the case's defining feature.
Well, for police, the fear surrounding these killings cuts both ways. Potential witnesses understand exactly what happens to men who are taken and brought back into Shankill territory. Even when someone sees or hears something, the calculation is immediate and brutal. Speaking carries more risk than silence. Statements are not given, names are not volunteered. The investigation turns inward, circling the same ground without traction.
Procedurally, pressure is applied wherever it can be. Suspects are stopped, questioned, and searched. Vehicles are examined. Homes are visited on grounds just firm enough to be lawful and just intrusive enough to be felt. But nothing holds. Without a survivor, without an independent witness, without any forensic material that can be tied to a person rather than a place, the case remains what it has been for months, an accumulation of certainty without proof.
What keeps the investigation alive is not progress, but proximity. The killings cluster around the same districts. The same routes reoccur. The same names surface again and again in background reports and informal intelligence. A disused doctor's surgery at the corner of Emerson Street and the Shankill Road. A place associated with UVF men, a place people are taken to and returned from altered, or not returned at all. Nesbitt is aware of it, yet he cannot use it.
By now, the limits of control are visible. The men responsible are not hidden. They're insulated. They drink openly. They argue publicly. They move through familiar streets with the assurance of people who believe, correctly so far, that the system cannot quite reach them. The violence is not tactical, it's habitual, and habit, repeated often enough, begins to look like protection. For more than a year, the investigation sits in this position. Knowledge without leverage. The murders have reshaped police thinking, public behavior, and private fear, but they have not yet produced a single element that turns understanding into action. Until that element arrives on the night of the 10th of May, 1977.
Well, Gerard McLaverty is approached by men claiming to be police officers. The ruse is simple and effective. Common enough in Belfast to avoid immediate suspicion, he is told that there has been an incident and that his assistance is required. Instead, he is taken to a disused building, the old surgery near Emerson Street, and subjected to extreme violence. He is beaten, his wrists slashed, and he is left for dead. Unlike the others, McLaverty survived.
His survival does not undo what has already happened, but it changes the investigation immediately. For the first time, detectives have a living witness who had been inside the process rather than discovering its end. McLaverty can describe the approach, the transport, the building, and the men involved. He can place faces inside a space police already know matters.
Well, I hope they got him into witness protection to keep him, safe.
That would have, if I was McLaverty, I'd be like, I want extreme protection, please.
Yep.
Obviously, I want to get these guys who did it to me, but I don't want to die in the process.
Yeah, I think the police would have done, because obviously that's their kind of bit of a breakthrough, really, actually having a survivor.
Yeah, they know everything.
Yeah.
They know all the guys. They know everything that's going on.
They pretty much just need
can't
someone
prove it.
to confirm.
Yeah.
These are the people that are doing these things.
Yeah, they just need that evidence. The smoking gun, catching him in the act, or a fucking witness.
Yeah, a really good witness.
Yep.
Well, in the days that follow, he takes part in identification procedures. Names that have circulated for months in intelligence files now sit beside eyewitness identification. The distance between what police suspect and what they can prove narrows sharply. Arrests follow. Powers that had yielded little suddenly became effective. Men who had operated with confidence are now taken into custody. The killings stop, not because of restraint has returned, but because control has shifted. The police got more control of these cases.
Yeah, once they nabbed up a lot of these dudes, a lot of that shit just stopped.
Yeah.
And also, they didn't get them all, probably, that were involved. But the rest of them were like, shit.
Yeah, because obviously it was like hot time, you'd think, right, well, it's too hot. The feds are on us. Do you know what I mean? We better lay low.
Yep.
So, yeah, they'll stop all the killings for a while until,
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to get fucking banged up. Fuck
Yeah.
that. Well, for Nesbitt and his team, the moment is decisive, but not triumphant. They know what lies ahead. Contested confessions, hostile defense counsel, the scrutiny of a diplock court. McLaverty's survival has not solved the case. It has made it prosecutable. The violence has not really ended, just around that area. But for the first time, it has been interrupted by something stronger than fear.
Well, the work done in alleys, interview rooms and back streets is ready to be tested in court. At Belfast Crown Court, the case is heard as a diplock trial, which is a juryless proceeding reserved for scheduled offences. 11 loyalist defendants from the Shankill are brought in prison vans through the rear of the courthouse under heavy security. Inside, there are no jury benches, only a single judge, tasked with deciding both fact and law.
When proceedings begin, the scale of the case becomes clear. The 11 defendants face more than 100 charges between them, including 19 counts of murder, alongside attempted murders, conspiracies, and weapons offenses drawn from both the cutthroat killings and other loyalist murders linked to the same network. It is one of the largest loyalist murder indictments ever brought before a UK court.
That's a lot of charges.
That is a lot of charges.
I mean, yes, there's a lot of defendants, 11 defendants,
of them.
But, that still is quite a lot.
Over 100 charges between 11 guys. That's a ton.
Damn. Well, the Crown's case is led by senior prosecutor Ronald Appleton, presiding over files that compress years of violence into numbered counts and exhibit. In human terms, 17 people were killed in the Butcher's Whore campaign of abduction and murder. The higher murder count reflects the way that the violence was framed in law, rather than how it unfolded on the streets.
Yeah, so the 17 were like the core ones, and then there was a couple more that they were able to pin on a couple of the other ones.
Yeah.
So, but his opening, Appleton does not replay each killing in full. He frames the defendants as a UVF-linked gang operating from the Shankill Road, who set out to deliberately abduct, torture, and murder Catholic civilians and a number of Protestants as well, for motives ranging from sectarian hatred to petty feuds. What might look like scattered incidents, shootings, hatchet attacks, throat cuttings, is alleged to be a single campaign with overlapping personnel and methods.
The judge, Lord Justice Turlough O'Donnell, listens from the bench. He is the sole decision maker in the courtroom. There will be no lay deliberation, no jury foreman to stand and speak. Every statement, photograph, and medical report is laid before one legal mind. A concentration of responsibility that is both the protection and the burden of the system.
You don't want them, like juries, to be tampered with or intimidated or anything like that. You just have one judge, one guy to say this is right or wrong or guilty or not guilty.
Which we're kind of going through at the moment with, a possible change of jury service.
Yeah. Like, was it under 3-year sentence that you could get for a crime? They're going to say it's no juries.
In a magistrate's court, they would like to bring in where you just have the judge make the decision and no juries, but just a jury for Crown Court's severe cases in Crown Court. But so they're looking at doing sort of something like that now, to where a judge is just the sole
arbiter of anything that's going to, which I think is kind of crazy. I'd rather, be judged by my peers than just one person.
I would prefer that, to be fair.
But I think the worst part of that one is that you can't appeal.
Yeah. Yeah, they're also bringing in where you possibly won't be getting an automatic appeal, which is highly...
I think that goes against your rights. It goes against your rights because I think, personally, you should be able to appeal. Because,
you should at least be able to have one appeal.
Yes, to say, well, like they got this wrong or something like that, or you had ineffective counsel, they missed something or whatever. and you're not able to bring that to the court.
Take that one appeal away. Say you're sentenced for 3 years and you have no right to appeal, then, you could do them 3 years, come out and then actually be like, hey, look into this again because I was wrongly, put to prison.
Try to get your thing overturned.
Exactly. And then find out that you've actually spent, if you're not guilty and you can prove that you was not guilty.
You spent those 3 years in there for nothing.
Yeah, wasted 3 years of your life being incarcerated, but it's madness.
not good. Not good. I don't agree with it. I think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a bad idea.
And if their rationale is to help the backlog of whatever, that's not. You can't take away people's rights just to try to, get the backlog done with. No. That's not right.
And these rights have been for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think going forward, what the jury, not the jury service, but what the justice service needs is more money. Have magistrates take on more cases because they don't. They do half days.
Well, anyways, back to the story.
Yeah.
The Crown organizes its case in layers of proof, not the spectacle. First come the police witnesses, detectives from Tennant Street, including DCI Jimmy Nesbitt, outlining how separate murder files became linked and how a survivor finally gave them the names. They speak of arrests, formal cautions, recorded interviews, and written confessions, the procedural skeleton of the investigation rather than the gore of the scenes.
Then the medical and forensic experts, pathologists confirming cause of death, doctors detailing injuries to surviving and deceased victims, technical staff explaining how particular injuries match particular weapons. Their task is to show that the manner of the killings across multiple cases is consistent and deliberate, and to anchor the defendant's admissions in hard physical fact.
Only after those structural witnesses does the court hear from the civilian survivor whose existence changed the course of the inquiry, Gerard McLaverty. He does not reenact the night. He answers the questions. He confirms that he was taken by men claiming to be the police, driven to a derelict surgery, assaulted, and later identified 2 of the accused in the dock as among his attackers. Defense counsel probe his memory and his identification, but he holds to the essentials. His evidence turns a faceless terror campaign into something traceable to living individuals in the courtroom. When it's their turn to answer, the accused take different paths.
Yeah. William Billy Moore, who became de facto leader after Murphy was imprisoned on firearms offences, pleads guilty to 11 murders and other serious offences. Robert Basher Bates, obviously these little names in between are their nicknames.
What a nickname there, Basher.
Well, Robert Basher Bates, he entered guilty pleas to 10 murders. Others contest some counts but not others, or maintain partial denials. In a Diplock court, these are not moments of drama, they are entries on a charge sheet, quietly transforming allegations into admitted facts.
For the remaining disputed counts, the judge weighs what is before him: confessions, corroboration, medical evidence, and the emerging pattern of the killings. His findings are delivered calmly, name by name, charge by charge. The court record reduces it to legal shorthand, guilty or not guilty. But the result is unequivocal. 11 men convicted in connection with 19 murders alongside a catalogue of related offences.
Sentencing follows. The court is unusually full. Lawyers, police, press, and a small number of relatives and observers sit in the public gallery. Judge O'Donnell addresses Moore directly, then Bates, telling them that their crimes were carried out, quote, in a manner so cruel and revolting as to be beyond the comprehension of any normal human being. He says he does not wish to pose as a public avenger, but that he can see no reason, apart from terminal illness, why either of them should ever be released.
Yeah, that's right.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, in total, the judge imposes 42 life sentences across the group. Yeah, that is the most ever handed down in a single trial in British criminal history. The symbolism is deliberate, even in a legal system that must process hundreds of conflict-related killings. This case is marked out as exceptional. In his remarks, O'Donnell describes the series of murders as, quote, a catalogue of horror and a lasting monument to blind sectarian bigotry.
As in all cases, no sentence can repair the lives taken, but the formal act matters. This is the point at which the state writes its verdict on what the Shankill butchers did. Not freelance heroics, not community defence, but organised murder on a sectarian and personal basis. The men who once moved through Shankill bars with blades in their pockets now stand in the dock to hear that judgment read into record.
When O'Donnell had finished, he rises, nods to the court, and leaves. Warders move in around the dock, unlocking cuffs from the rail and reaffixing them to belts and wrists. One by one, the convicted men are led down the short, echoing stairway to the cells. Van doors clanging shut outside as they are taken back towards the maze and other prisons.
Well, the trial ended on the 20th of February of 1979, but the violence does not end with it. In legal terms, the Shankill butchers have been dismantled. On paper, the threat has been neutralised. On the streets of North and West Belfast, the effect is less certain.
In the years following the convictions, police and families continue to ask whether all the violence linked to the same circle has truly stopped. Several killings occur that, while never proven in court to involve the butchers directly, are widely suspected of bearing familiar features: abduction, extreme violence, disposal in loyalist areas, and silence afterwards.
In October of 1982, Joseph Donegan, a 48-year-old Catholic civilian, is abducted and beaten to death. His body is found in an entry off Brookmount Street, close to areas long associated with loyalist activity. Investigators and relatives believe the killings carried echoes of earlier attacks, but no charges are brought. Like other suspected cases from this period, it remains unresolved. Violence that sits in the shadow of the convictions rather than within them.
For families, that uncertainty matters. The trial has delivered punishment, but not complete clarity. The fear that shaped daily life through the mid-1970s does not lift cleanly. It fades unevenly, street by street, rumor by rumor. It is against this background that Lenny Murphy returns. He wasn't even in it.
Nope.
Like he was in jail.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Madness.
The main dude that fucking ran these guys was in jail already, and they couldn't grab him for it.
Well, Murphy had not stood trial, obviously, with the others. At the time of the 1979 proceedings, obviously, he was already serving a sentence for firearms offences. In July of 1982, having served just over half that term, he was released. Almost immediately, his presence is felt. According to later investigations and intelligence assessments, Murphy gathers a new group of loyalists around him and is believed to have resumed violent activity against Catholics and Protestants alike, in ways that alarm even elements within the UVF who fear he is destabilising their own internal order. Murphy does not last long.
Yeah, they're like, okay.
We don't like this guy coming in, taking over our patch and what we're doing.
Well, if you're too noisy and you're doing crazy shit, they're just like, okay, guy, you gotta go. Because on the 16th of November, 1982, Murphy had just pulled up outside the rear of his girlfriend's house in the Forth River area of Glencairn when two provisional IRA gunmen emerged from a vehicle nearby and opened fire. Armed with automatic weapons, they struck him more than 20 times, killing him instantly. Murphy was 30 years old. Live by the sword, die by the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, 30 years old, gunned down.
There has been a lot of young people being murdered in this case.
Yep. Just for nothing.
Yeah.
Just because, hey, you're Catholic, oh, you're Protestant, and just craziness. Well, the ambush took place only streets away from the locations where several of the Shankill butcher's victims had been dumped. Within days, the Provisional IRA claimed responsibility. According to Royal Ulster Constabulary intelligence assessments at the time, loyalist paramilitaries had provided information about Murphy's movements, enabling the attack. Some later allegations pointed to figures within the UDA, though none of those claims were ever tested in court. They sold his ass out.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, Murphy's burial is anything but quiet. Murphy received a full UVF paramilitary funeral, complete with masked men and a volley of shots fired over the coffin. His headstone reads, quote, "Here lies a soldier." Years later, Shankill community worker Baroness Mayblood publicly rejected that framing. She argued that calling men like Murphy soldiers distorted the meaning of the word, and contrasted them with those who had served or worked without terrorising their own communities.
Hell yeah.
Which I agree.
Hell yeah.
In the late 1980s, the headstone is smashed. A small but telling sign that even within loyalist Belfast, the mythology surrounding him is contested.
Yep. Not everybody agrees with him.
Nope.
Well, behind prison walls, the remaining members of the gang settled into long sentences shaped by parole reviews and internal hierarchies. Some take on roles within loyalist wings. Others fade from prominence. Over time, releases begin.
Ugh, keep them in.
Yep, here we go.
I think if you've murdered, if you've done something so serious as that, I don't think you can be rehabilitated. Lesser crimes, minor stuff, yes, you could. I do believe you can be rehabilitated, but when you've murdered somebody, no.
Well,
in my view,
some things, kind of like when we did the Grey Steel Massacre. When the Good Friday Agreement came out, a lot of people got let out that had just done crimes within the last few years of before the agreement, and you're just like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, so John Townsley, who had been a teenager at the time of his arrest, is among the first to be freed. And then in the mid-1990s, Robert Basher Bates is released on license and begins working with an ex-prisoner's support group. On the 11th of June, 1997, as he arrives at work on the Shankill Road, Bates is shot dead by the son of James Moorhead, the loyalist Bates had helped kill more than 20 years earlier. The gunman identifies himself before firing. The killing is treated as part of a loyalist feud, and UDA leadership later exiled the shooter rather than hand him over to police. That's crazy.
That's a retaliation for killing his father, isn't it?
Yep.
Wow.
He got justice.
Well, William Moore, who pleaded guilty to 11 murders, he was released in August of 1998 under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement.
Here we go again.
After serving more than just 2 decades in prison. He died in 2009. His funeral, like Murphy's and Bates, includes visible UVF trappings, a source of deep anger for many victims' families, who see such ceremonies as a continuation of the intimidation they endured during the killings themselves. Other figures surface periodically. Eddie McLilwain. Sounds like I said McLilwain.
McLilwain.
Right, you say that word again.
McIlwain.
Eddie McIlwain is photographed later years. Later years. Can't you say that? You say that.
Eddie McIlwain is photographed years later at loyalist events, marching or raising flags, reminders that men once convicted of serial sectarian murder can still move through public spaces after the ceasefires. In 2004, the Serious Crime Review team re-examined the 1976 death of Rosaline O'Kane, found burned in her flat. The timing, location, and victim profile led some investigators and relatives to question whether her killing might be connected to the butchers. Despite renewed forensic review and family campaigns for fresh inquests, no charges ever followed.
The case settles into history, but not into silence. Martin Dillon's book, The Shankill Butchers, published in 1990, became the definitive account, framing the gang within the wider violence of the Troubles. In 2011, the BBC broadcasts Stephen Nolan's documentary, The Shankill Butchers, confronting former detectives with questions about investigative limits, intelligence failures, and whether earlier intervention might have saved lives.
The entries off Mayo Street, the junctions near Forth River, Emerson Street, and the Old Surgery, places that look ordinary in daylight but carry memory in their layout. For many locals, the name Shankill Butchers is not history but instruction. Where not to linger, which routes to avoid, which silences once mattered.
Well, the men who carried out the killings are dead, imprisoned, or diminished by time. The violence they unleashed did not end cleanly with a verdict. It receded unevenly, leaving behind questions that never received courtroom answers, and a city that learned slowly and painfully how to live again in the spaces where it once learned to fear.
Well, that was the story of the Shankill Butchers.
That was a crazy case.
They
And a lot of
did a lot of
murders.
crazy shit, yeah.
I mean,
Fucking wild.
terrible. I mean, what a time to live in.
Yeah, just, you could be going to work, you could be going to see your significant other,
Mm.
and just snatched off the street or shot or stabbed or, your throat cut, hatchet in the head. Like, that is absolute. Man, I wouldn't go outside.
No, I don't think I would either. Be staying indoors with them locked.
Yeah, we ain't got it like now where you can just order groceries and they deliver it to your door.
Yeah, they probably didn't have none of that back then in the 70s, 60s, 70s.
I've been running around in a
No
full.
Deliveroos.
I would have been running around in a full suit of armor or something, man. Be like, fuck these guys. God
Crikey.
damn.
Yeah, and that would have been hell to live in that time, going through and sort of seeing all that going on. And it wasn't just one thing every sort of like couple of years, it was just sounds consistent.
And this was just one part of the city
Madness.
and one part of Northern Ireland. This shit was going on all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just so scary.
I mean, obviously we have murders now, but I do feel a lot safer now by the sounds of how this all was back then with, religious hate, really.
Yep.
It falls on religious hate with the Catholics and the Protestants.
Yeah, just like the judge said, it's just sectarian bigotry.
Yeah.
They're just bigoted towards each other, and it's like, let's just be peaceful, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's just live together and whatever. But no.
It's such a shame. A lot of lives lost there.
Yeah, all for nothing. Crazy.
Well, thanks for being here and listening to this case, guys. If you'd like to support the work that we do here in the archive, please take a moment to follow the show and leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps others discover the stories we tell and keeps the archive growing. Sharing the podcast with someone who loves true crime also makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it sure does. So you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British and on Facebook at MMB Podcast. And if you want to chat with us and other listeners, please come and join us at the Crypt Chat. It's on our free Discord space with case discussions, theories, and updates from the archive.
Well, everything you need, socials, Discord, and more, is in our link tree below, so check it out.
So until next week, stay safe and stay curious.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.